Okay, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to Maynooth University School of Business. Today we host the inaugural event of our 2021-22 Industry Speaker Series, Future Graduate, Future Work. My name is Brian Donnellan, the Vice President of Research here in Maynooth, and it's a great privilege and pleasure for me to be invited to chair this session. The speaker series has been designed for all the students in the School of Business and it's brought to you by the Careers of Industry and Alumni function of our school in partnership with our Industry Advisory Council, and it offers a unique mix of key speaker events and industry panel sessions which have been scheduled over the academic year. We have 5 industry panel speaking events scheduled over the academic year this year. Each event will spotlight a different industry and comprises of industry experts who will offer valuable insight and advice on their featured industry. We also have 3 keynote speaking events planned for 2022 as part of the series. So today, our panel of industry experts will focus on the changing world of work in the technology sector and the opportunity that presents to School of Business graduates. It's a pleasure to introduce you to our really exceptional lineup of panel guests today. Bernie Capraro, Silicon Technology Research Manager from Intel, Nick Leader, Vice President EMEA Large Customer Sales Hub and Google Ireland Site Lead, Lorna Martin, a Senior Vice President and Head of Technology from Fidelity Investments, and Ross Fowles, Recruitment Manager from Amazon Web Services. You're all very welcome and delighted that you can make it today, and thanks very much for being so generous with your time to participate in today's event. Great, so without further ado, let's kick on, and we've got a fairly rapid question and answer session planned for today. So I'd like to thank all of you out there who contributed questions to today's event. We will hopefully get around to all of the questions that you submitted. And I'll open up with a question from Bernie. So Bernie, the IT sector in Ireland, lots of good news generally. In fact, it's hard to turn on a TV or listen to radio without hearing positive vibes about the IT sector in Ireland generally. And indeed, there may be some upcoming good news in Intel that might have a very positive effect for Ireland. So how has Ireland become one of the leading largest exporters of IT services in the world, and just how exciting a time is it to be part of the IT sector in Ireland?
Yeah, thanks, Brian, and hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. Yeah, you're spot on. It really is an exciting time, isn't it, right now? You know, in my business, semiconductors, if you just look up the road from Maynooth University into Leixlip, you can see already, you know, there's construction underway of 2 brand new fabs, right? You know, so Intel Ireland, that represents a big investment, and Intel Ireland has doubled the investment into the country, you know, in the last 3 years, you know. So it's really quite phenomenal, and we're currently hiring as well, like 1,600 new positions. So we're in the process of hiring for those. So why has Ireland become so successful? Well, there's many ingredients to making that cake. You know, first of all, you know, you have the correct incentives. So you all hear about, you know, corporate tax rate and stuff like that. That's been very stable, predictable over the years in Ireland. You know, corporations have been easily able to plan, and even with the changes that are coming down the road there, you know, and the new 15% minimum rate, you know, it's still going to be fairly stable. It's still going to be predictable, and no one else is going to have any less. So I do believe that's a key thing. There's other tax incentives as well out there, such as the R&D tax credit, that provides a good element of competition as well, and provides, you know, the ability to do excellent research and support the manufacturing that's taking place. So that would be the first one. Correct incentives provided with government, and you know, you can rest assured Pascal Donohue's going to do a good job there, you know, with the new rollout, etc. Second thing I would say is excellent talent, right? Ireland really does have great talent, and the ability to partner with universities such as yourself I think is really key. You know, the ability to co-create, co-deliver, and co-assess now as well. You know, if you think about things that have happened recently with the Human Capital Initiative, that's enabling industry to really jump in and lean into what the curricula should be going forward, because we have a lot of change going on in the world. That enables as well, like, you know, companies then take that excellent talent, they develop them further. And if I just look at Intel, a great example of the last week is one of our postgrad hires in 1996, Dr. Ann Kelleher from UCC. You know, just this week, or in the last week, sorry, just been made an executive vice president of Intel. You know, and she oversees now the whole of the corporation's technology development. That's fantastic, isn't it? And that's the kind of talent that we can get. The small collaborative nature of Ireland as well. You probably can tell from this accent, I'm not actually Irish. I came over 25 years ago from the UK, and I am blown away about how easy it is to get to the people that you need to get. I mean, I've met the Taoiseach many times, right? It's not hard to get to the people that you need to get to, you know, to get to the decision makers, have the right conversations. It's an open and collaborative country, which I really love. And obviously it's close to the markets as well. If we just look at the EU semiconductor market in 2020, that was about 44 billion euros, and it's anticipated to be double that by 2030. So that's the ingredients that I see. Why is it exciting? Well, you know, the pace of change in our world has never been so rapid, right? And also the pandemic, unfortunately, that we've been experiencing over the last couple of years, that's increased the acceleration for the need for technology. There's an American inventor, writer, and futurist, Ray Kurzweil, who said, you know, the rate of change in the 21st century will be equivalent to that of 20,000 years of progress at the current rate of progression. And that was before the pandemic hit, right? We saw our sales or global shipments of PCs in the first quarter of 2020 was up 55%. So there's this great need for semiconductors and chips. As demand goes up as well, we must also balance the supply of the semiconductors across the globe. And that's why you're seeing that large construction taking place up the road there in Leixlip. In just 30 years, unfortunately, the EU went from a 40% share of global manufacturing just down to 9%. And we have a target with the European Commission to try and get that back up to 20% by 2030. So hence the buzz around, you know, investing in advanced manufacturing across the region. And lastly, you know, it's Intel's purpose to create world-changing technology that improves the lives of every person on Earth. And we try to do that very responsibly as well. We have a responsibility to have an impact on the world's big challenges, such as the pandemic, health, climate change, education. All of these require silicon chips. So we have a massive opportunity. And for us here, the opportunity is just up the road from you there in Leixlip. That's it, Brian.
Thanks very much, Bernie. Thanks for a very upbeat and optimistic overview. Now I'm going to switch to Nick in Google. So Nick, it said that the IT industry changes with incredible pace, and quite a number of jobs in the industry today did not exist 5 years ago. So in your opinion, what will be the biggest change in terms of direction and of skills demand in Ireland over the next 5 years?
Thanks very much, Brian. Thanks very much for the invitation today. Yeah, look, it's as Bernie was saying, yeah, we're really optimistic about the role Ireland's going to play for Google. I think I'd probably just add one thing to the recipe that Ireland has that's so important to Google, and I'm sure it's the case for the other American multinationals as well. Ireland's a place that Americans understand, and it's a really great bridge into the EU. It's now the only English-speaking common law country in the EU. So I think that's only going to blow in the favour of Ireland over the long run. So what's going to happen? Look, the basic, I think Bernie touched on it, there's going to be more of everything, right? There's going to be more engineers, there's going to be more commercial people, We've put over $1 billion into Ireland over the last 18 years. We had nobody here 18 years ago. We've got 5,000 today. That's going to grow. But I think one of the interesting shifts for Ireland over the years ahead is, if you look what happened in pharmaceutical, the same recipe attracted lots of pharmaceutical companies in to make Ireland their home in the EU. But that industry became increasingly regulated over years. And I think the same thing's going to happen in digital. We already see it. We've got lots of regulation coming. And there's a really interesting role for Ireland to play in the EU as the regulatory home for digital. And that's really, really important that Ireland equip itself to be able to do that. It's really important that we're able to meet that challenge as well. So beyond just more of everything, which we'll have, I think there's going to be a really interesting area of compliance and regulation. It's not boring. It can sound a little dull, but it's not. It's going to be incredibly important to the tech industry as a whole. You only have to look at what's going on with content and social and things like that at the moment to get a flavour of what's coming. And I think it's going to be a really interesting anchor for Ireland into the future. And there'll be loads and loads of work to be done there, engineering work, but also business people work, legal people, accounting, all that sort of stuff, as we build up the real regulatory capacity of tech in Ireland. So I think that's probably the one I'd single out beyond just more of everything.
Great, thanks very much, Nick. Okay, so let's move on to Lorna in Fidelity. Lorna, the COVID-19 pandemic has provided the world with a valuable lesson in working from home. So that there is this new normal, I guess, that we're all living in, and that's changed the fabric of society and the fabric of our daily lives. How do you see the move to working from anywhere impacting the world of work in Ireland for graduates next year and in the near future?
Well, Brian, as you say, this is the biggest inflection point in the world of work. And I suppose the first thing is that it reinforces the need for businesses to be digital first, but also for all workers to think about what their digital skills are. And we're still mid-pandemic. We were talking a little bit about this before we started today. And while some companies have declared their intentions in terms of we're going to create a fully remote business model or a hybrid model, I think most of us are still learning. And certainly that's been the approach that we've seen with many of the companies in Ireland. They're looking at very much, while we're still mid-pandemic, a very much a safety-first approach, a big focus on providing the resources for their employees. And over the last 2 years, I'm sure everyone on this call has had interns, who weren't in the office, who have come on board as part of teams, in a fully digital manner. And I think if I cast forward, I believe that there's still going to be a very important place in having an office type setting in the future of work. But I think that combination is going to be much more an experience that will be a mix of hybrid and in person, and it will depend on the types of activities. And I think for students, and certainly I've spoken to a lot of recent graduates, we have a graduate program that runs twice a year. We've continued to recruit graduates throughout the pandemic. There's a huge desire to have those opportunities to collaborate in person. But equally in parallel, we have to think about how do we actually improve that digital experience. I think there are also structural factors and structural challenges that the world at large has to take into account. Everyone, you hear these terms, digital nomads, thrown out there, but there are lots of structural elements worldwide around taxation, around infrastructure, around visa and work permitting. And we have many international students in Ireland, and that's certainly things that will be on their mind. But I think the good news, for graduates, future graduates, and employees in the workplace today in this sector is the focus is very much on employee experience. Everyone is thinking about what is the best experience, whether that's an in-person, a fully digital, or a hybrid experience. And I think that most organizations, that is their focus at the moment in terms of how can we bring new and innovative ways of working online. And I think we have to challenge some of the traditional models of work. We heard early in pandemic that productivity will be a challenge, that things like innovation will be a challenge, and yet we see continued innovation. It's just maybe not in the way that we've innovated before, you know. So I think that I would be, again, like the previous speakers, I'd be very optimistic about the future. What I would say is, for all of us, we need to think about, I don't know, how we can continue to learn, how we can be flexible, and, you know, for students, I think it's really important, particularly coming into maybe your first role, to be very upfront, you know, with your employer and share maybe what your needs are, because, you know, every employer will always look to make accommodations based on preferences and needs. And I think that's something that, you know, as graduates going through that process of employment, it's important to, you know, to share that, because the help is there. But I'm pretty excited. You know, I think we have a little while to go yet in Ireland before we probably fully appreciate the hybrid experience. We've seen a lot of democracy in terms of interaction over the last 18 months or so, and I'd love to see some of that persist into the future, Brian.
Thanks very much, Lorna. Thank you. So let's switch to Amazon Web Services and Ross. Ross, for students from the School of Business at final year and in postgraduate study, why should they consider a career in the IT industry, and how can they know if a career in tech would be for them? As a recruiting manager, what are the core essential skill or life skills that you see that are needed in the IT industry?
Yeah, so firstly, thank you very much for the invite today. Really appreciate being included in such an illustrious panel. I think in terms of this particular question, I think there's a ton of opportunities for students from maybe a non-tech background to consider opportunities in the tech sector. AWS in particular hires a ton of people into a ton of different roles that are associated and kind of run parallel to our really technical functions. So some of the standout kind of fields for us would be things like sales and marketing positions, support functions, some of our client-facing and customer-facing roles, as well as the really hands-on functions that live in and breathe in our data centers and keep our customers up and running. So I think from my perspective, there's a really, really varied list of opportunities that people can consider. And in addition to that, once you're on board and with a company, again, from an AWS perspective, but I'm sure it's true for everyone on the call, I think there are a ton of opportunities to then upskill and look at different opportunities within the business. We have a lot of opportunities for people to consider sideways moves into different parts of the business once they've proven themselves in an existing field. And I think that can be a really exciting opportunity. So once you're actually on board, there exist opportunities to really benefit from training and upskilling as part of the role itself. So I would say that stands out as a really obvious reason for me. In terms of the life skills that people would require, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I guess, standing out in the application stage and how that looks as well. But I think from a life skills perspective, I would say for any company that you're applying to, there's typically a lot of information available online about that company's culture, how they operate, what they're driven by. Resources like Glassdoor are really, really useful for getting a sense of what's good and what's potentially bad about an employer, but also understanding what it is that they value from their employees. And I think getting really embedded into that thinking can really stand out. So from an Amazon perspective, we really value people that align with our leadership principles, which you can see a lot of information online. So people that are able to self-service from a learning perspective, people that have a drive to learn new skills, people that want to put a customer first and really think about the way they operate in terms of getting a great solution or a great fix for a customer are really important to us. And people that are really motivated by a challenge as well. And I think those are some of the really kind of standout features for us.
Great, thanks, Ross. Lorna, can we return to you and Fidelity, please, to talk about diversity? So when we think about leaders in the IT sector, you know, we do tend to think of names like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Page, Jeff Bezos, all males, and of course that is problematic. So what is the tech industry in Ireland doing to promote gender parity in the workplace? And have you any advice for graduating females wanting to enter the world of tech and keen to progress to leadership positions?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot going on, Brian. And, when I joined the tech industry, no one talked about inclusion, no one talked about diversity. But equally, I came from a university class that was almost 50-50. So it seems like the more we learn, the less women actually come into the tech industry. From my own experience, I will say as a woman in technology, I have absolutely no regrets, and it's a career that's, has given great opportunities. And I think sometimes we get hung up on the stereotypes, and particularly for women. If you look at the entry into college classes, it's typically about 10%. The industry at large is about 30% female. That's across all roles. But if you look at engineering, it's much less than that. And if you look at some of the more specifics, it's much less than that. So we tend to see fall off. So, in terms of, I think every company has, they have their D&I policies, they have policies around recruitment. You've probably seen the graduates in the college have probably seen lots of focus on, trying to attract women into tech careers. Our big challenge at the moment is probably the width of the pipeline in terms of how many graduates are coming out with the skills, particularly in the engineering space. But my advice to, we're talking to students in the college business at the moment. If I look at our organisation, and Ross mentioned it, there are lots of things you can think about from a transferable skills perspective. So if you've done a business course, I would always recommend that you do some research, that you look at, are there opportunities to do modules in the space that give you a little bit more broad experience. Think about opportunities through internships or any other work that you might do on the side. And I would, for women in particular, I would say reach out to women in roles that you might be interested in. A lot of what the industry is doing at the moment is focusing on trying to bring those role models to the fore. At Fidelity, we do a huge amount of work in the schools and in the universities, everything all the way back to children in the primary schools. Because what we tend to see is the fall-offs tend to happen at about 11 or 12 years of age. There was a great study done as part of Young Scientist a few years ago by two young men who looked at in the schools with young children, and they asked them to draw an engineer, and they were equally likely to draw a male or a female engineer. So young kids do not rule themselves out of careers. It's as we kind of get more socialized and start thinking more about what our peer groups are saying, we tend to opt out. So I suppose my advice to women would be to really think very clearly about looking broadly, looking for opportunities, speaking to people about careers. Don't make assumptions, because you hear so many assumptions around, well, I don't have the skills for a career in tech. There's loads of different pathways in. You can come in through the business and transfer into technology. We have a business operations group here in Dublin, and we also have a large technology organisation, and we do see transferability, and particularly in financial services, where a lot of the business graduates bring a lot of really good data skills in, and sometimes they forget about that. So my advice would be absolutely to reach out, use the career service, use any links that you have to industry, seek out the role models. Even if you go on LinkedIn and you see someone in a career path, they'll always answer. If somebody sends me a message and says, I'm thinking about X, Y, and Z, what would your advice be? You will always get an answer. And I suppose the other thing I would say is, from the financial rewards and the ability to travel in normal times, it's a very transferable career skill to bring. We've heard a number of speakers on the call today who are not from Ireland, so you'll also, no matter where you go in the world, you'll hear Irish voices. So as graduates, regardless of what your course is, look at what digital skills you can bring. Think about your bigger transferable skills, and just be brave. That's all I would say, Brian.
What a great message. Thanks, Lorna. Okay, let's switch back to Amazon and Ross. So Ross, there's an image out there of high tech working environments as being, pretty cool. Lots of ping pong tables, nap rooms, free snacks, beers in the fridge, people hanging out. basketball hoops and whatnot. And also, we read reports that the remuneration in the sector can be very high. Is that true? Is that a true reflection of the industry in Ireland? And specifically, are non-pure tech roles, for instance, accounting or marketing or sales or HR, are they also paid above the market level? Or is it only true for very highly specialized roles?
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting question, and actually, I think it's a particularly interesting one in COVID times, because actually, I haven't been in the office properly for coming up for 2 years at this point, and actually, my first time back in our London offices, I'm based in London, was a couple of weeks ago, and it did feel pretty strange to be back and surrounded by only a handful of people. We're still very low capacity in our buildings, but yeah, we do have things like pool tables and meditation rooms and some really cool things. There's also I always like to go to the top floor of the building in the Shoreditch office in London, because it's just got an awesome view of the city. So yeah, I think from my perspective, I think it definitely is part of the picture at the moment, but it's obviously been a very different experience for almost everyone over the last couple of years. And I think it was Lorna mentioning, actually all of our interns pretty much have had essentially an entirely virtual experience for the last 18 months or so. So they haven't benefited from that kind of experience. It hasn't been what they've had. They've been working from their bedroom, using laptop that we sent them, and hopefully some decently sized screens, so they're not squinting too much during the day. So I feel like the landscape has changed a little bit, and maybe that hasn't been the case during the pandemic. And I think on the subject of salary, I think it's a really interesting one. So we spend a lot of time and energy researching what motivates candidates, not just in the kind of early careers kind of portion of our hiring, but across the board. But the thing that stands out when we're talking to students and getting their feedback is that actually salary isn't always the big driver. So the things that stand out for us in most of the demographics that we're hiring are actually, what are the green credentials of the company? What are we doing to give back to society? What does work-life balance look like? What are the opportunities to grow? These are the things that typically show up as being more important than salary. So I think actually when I look at it, so I do a lot of hands-on recruiting. I'm hiring grads across EMEA. We hire a lot into Dublin. I think there definitely are a ton of different fields where you can make some really, really quite impressive salaries early on in your career. So the things that that stand out for me on the kind of technical side are the SDE roles. If you're studying software development, I can tell you now you're in short supply and high demand, and you will make a really great salary. But also things like data analytics, people that have in-demand skills in terms of certain types of software, or they've completed certain types of training. So I think when thinking about that, it's definitely not universally true that if you work for a tech company, you're making twice as much as someone doing a similar role in another company. I wouldn't say that's universally true, at least in Amazon. I would love to tell you that it is, so that you'll want to apply and work for us, but I wouldn't say that's been my experience. I would say if money is your motivator, then you should really think about identifying a niche. Where is the demand, and what does the future look like as well? So we've spoken a little bit about some of the trends in the industry. So if you can work out where the industry is going and what some of the in-demand skill sets are likely to be, you're standing yourself in good stead to make a lot of money somewhere down the line. But I also think you should really challenge yourself to think about what you're motivated by, because actually if it's not money, you should consider maybe a wider option in terms of companies to work for. And arguing against myself slightly here, maybe that's not working for a really huge company, maybe that's working for a slightly smaller organization, but I think you need to find the fit that is right for you. And on that same line, I would also say that any interview process you experience, you should treat very much as a two-way street. It's not just about the company assessing you and your skill set. You should treat it as an opportunity to interview them and to find out whether you're aligned with what they're driven by, what their corporate culture is, and what their values and morals are. So I think, I think money is an interesting one. I think Ireland is a really, really hot market for talent at the moment. It's a very fast-paced market, and you can definitely make some very impressive salaries early on. but just question yourself as to whether that's the primary motivator for you or not. And there's nothing wrong with it being your primary motivator, but it just might not be for everyone.
Thanks, Ross. Okay, we'll swing back to Intel and Bernie for the next question, which is about international students and international talent. So the tech industry has done so much to attract international talent to Ireland, and as recruiters, I would say that hiring exceptional talent has become an international business. So despite this, international students who complete their studies in Ireland and who are granted permission to work here under the third level graduate program Stamp 1G often vent frustration at the reluctance of many employers across different industries to engage with them in recruitment processes. So it's a constant media coverage on talent shortages, Bernie, and a war on talent going on. How open is the technology industry to Stamp 1G students, and what can be done to put a better focus on this talent pool for growing organizations?
Yeah, very good question, and it kind of comes back to the diversity and inclusion piece as well. And Lorna said some great things there, which I completely agree with. You know, it's really useful actually to include different backgrounds in companies where you're trying every day to solve really big issues. You know, it's a real tangible benefit if you can actually bring a different point of view to the problem. And it's something that we've tried to do at Intel for many years. You know, we have this mission inside our factory, you know, to value everybody's unique contributions, and it's a journey. You know, it needs to be embedded into a culture. You know, it's not something you just turn on. You actually you actually develop it over a long time. Much the same as we did with our safety culture as well. So I always comment, actually. I mean, this is actually funny, but it's true, right? You know, we have 114,000 employees worldwide, and every single one of them walks up the right-hand side of the staircase holding a handrail, right? It's impressive, isn't it? We've actually achieved that, and if you can do the same thing as well for diversity, you know, go on that journey where, you know, what is diversity? It's if you think of it as the analogy of the dance, someone might have heard this before, you know. Invite everybody to the dance, right? All backgrounds. And then the inclusion part is, you know, being asked to dance, isn't it? And then if you can dance then in the room like anything, like you just don't care, then that's really belonging. And that's the kind of journey that we're trying to come on. So in terms of like international students, you see a lot of postgraduates as international students, and we try to support them in many different ways. So for example, we have master's bursaries that we support the final year of the master's student. We support co-fund many PhD students along their journey of doing their PhDs, and that's for a couple of reasons: talent pipeline, but also, you know, that their research is of relevance to our research roadmap. So we have a need there as well. But when all that is done and dusted, like, you know, we do like to see them join Intel, you know, and we have a good record of that, not only in Ireland, but also in other parts of the world, like the US, for example. So, you know, you find that some masters and PhDs want to maybe continue with a research role as opposed to a manufacturing role. So, you know, for those guys, like, you know, something like the corporate research teams inside our US facilities is a fantastic fit. But it's all about, you know, having those supports in place from HR. You know, they can help them as well, you know, with their applications for work visas and things like that. Providing those opportunities so that they, you know, they do have a role to come into and add value to. And I think as well, like, you know, if you look at Ireland, you've got to do whatever we can to make sure that you know, there's affordable housing and infrastructure in place for these people as well. Like, you know, so there's government work to be done there as well. And you know, all the lobbying that we can do to make that happen, make the lives of these people livable and, you know, doable. That's important as well. But it's about providing those opportunities. It's working with them. And it's making them feel part of the club.
Thanks, Bernie. can I throw a question out to the panel as a whole, and it's about upskilling and lifelong learning, and what supports are there in the IT industry, tech industry? What opportunities are there to upskill if a graduate enters at a relatively junior level in your organization? They may want to develop their careers, develop a lifelong learning portfolio of skills, I suppose. What are the supports there to enable that to be successful?
Maybe
Anybody want to? Thanks, Lorna. Yeah.
A little bit of Brian. So we have 2 graduate programs. We have a technology graduate program, and we also have a business operations graduate program. And I spent a lot of time at career fairs, and I think uniquely, particularly on our tech program, you see a lot of graduate programs where it's like 2 years, and then there's a decision point. I think more and more in the tech space, you see employers who actually recruit their graduates and they're full-time employees from day one. So they receive all the benefits and opportunities that any other full-time employee would have. So from our perspective, I suppose in terms of lifelong learning, the first step is really the graduate programs themselves, in terms of building on those skills that are learned in university. We also take on apprentices through the apprentice programs, and we have a program that supports those apprentices as they work through their kind of earn and learn cycle and work with our teams. And then within our organisation, we have a huge set of communities of practice. So that covers every different facet of the type of work we do. And in parallel to that, we have some ERG programs as well. So essentially, there's support for you in terms of your skills, but there's also support in terms of, as Bernie talked about, inclusion in the organisation. It's an opportunity to really focus on what's required for new graduates, but also for everyone at every life stage. One of the big things that we introduced at Fidelity is a dedicated learning day. So we actually have dedicated learning days across all of our technology organisation. So 20% of your time is actually allocated to learning. And that's a combination of some self-directed, some things that teams would organise as a whole. And, it's really an investment in, lots of people say, well, gosh, what happens from a productivity perspective? But all of our data shows actually that investment in lifelong learning, absolutely yields huge rewards. And I suppose the other things that a lot we do as a company is we spend a lot of time looking at bringing the outside in. We work with a lot of our partners. Actually, we work very closely with Amazon, for example, around the learning agenda, looking at what are the skills of the future and how do we get people there. We offer support for certification. We offer study assist. And these are all the things that are they're common across the tech industry. It's actually a great place to go, because provided you come with maybe a level of underlying skills and an ability to learn, be able to work as part of teams, because it's very much about teamwork, not necessarily, very little work is really kind of just individual contributors. I think if you bring that mindset with you and you have that aspiration, there are ample supports within companies and also across the sector. So I'm the chair for Technology Ireland, and we work with the skill nets across the country. So whether you're in a small company or a larger company, there's accessibility to that lifelong learning. It's really bring your mindset with you.
Thanks, Lorna. Certainly no shortage of supports in Fidelity. Anybody else want to chip in?
I might just come in with one thought, which is like Fidelity, there's lots of learning at Google isn't sort of something that's done on the side. It's actually, you've got to, just to keep up, you have to keep learning. So it's something that we do invest a lot of time in. But I think one of the most old-fashioned ways that human beings learn is something that we're really investing a lot in at the moment. It's really old-fashioned. It goes back thousands of years. It's about coaching. And learning on the job and this is one of the reasons why we really do believe offices are going to be a big part of the future, because there's just nothing, we're seeing it right now because people are coming back into the office a bit, but there's just nothing like sitting with a great manager who's showing you how to do it, who's jumping on that call with you, giving you advice in the moment. It's just incredibly basic, fundamental, but it's such a big driver of learning. So that's just something that I think yeah, we've learned over the last couple of years. So we're back to basics. It's almost around the fire camp stuff. But you know, it's how I learned when I started my career in consulting as well. A lot of on-the-job coaching. So that's just an interesting thing that we've learned over the last couple of years, I think.
Fascinating that coaching and mentorship should be front and center again, Nick.
That's still really relevant in 2021, yeah. Right? Yep.
Yeah. Ross, Bernie, anything to add to that before we move on?
Yeah, maybe I could jump in. So everything that Lorna and Nick said is applicable as well inside our world here at Intel. But maybe if I just think about, one potential career option for the business school graduates, let's say finance, the finance world. Obviously we all have to have the the financial people controlling what we're doing in the technical world. So that there's a wonderful internship program that the finance team does inside Intel Ireland. But then after recruitment, what they do is they have a lovely graduate program whereby they can go and see all facets of the work that's done with the finance team, whether it be local business unit support, whether it be the support of the construction site that's actually going on right now, the corporate world, tax world, and so on and so forth. They get an opportunity to move around those areas and understand what they're all about. That's the first point, so you get a good view of the world. And then the second thing is as well, Intel really does encourage the finance folks to get their professional qualifications, right? And you all know that's difficult. There's a lot of exams and what have you, but they're completely supported in terms of the time they need to do those studies, the fees that they need to pay to actually get into those exams, etc. So that's just another example of something that's non-technical. From the technical side, our interaction with the universities really pays off there as well, because if I think about our technicians on the factory floor, we hire from level 6, level 7 for the technician roles. The level 6 is I put together a course with TU Dublin that enables them in their own time, part-time, either over 2 years or 4 years, to continue to level 7 and get a level 7 degree as well. So those kind of things actually can be done and do happen as well inside places like Intel.
Thanks, Bernie. Just to stay on this kind of these practicalities of career management and career development. So what's the best way for students to find out about new opportunities for both non-technical roles and technical roles in the sector? How do you advise students where should they go? What should they do to make themselves aware of these opportunities?
Brian, I might kick this off. We've got a very practical way. There's a search engine out there, which may be your preferred search engine. And if you type in careers at Google, you will find lots of stuff all over the place. And I bet Intel, Amazon, Fidelity have equal sites that will give people exposure. It's really practical, and it's particularly if you're, I don't know about the other places, but if you're applying for a role, we do get a lot of resumes just coming in, sort of organically. But the really key thing, I think, is to attach an application to a role, because that means that our recruitment teams will really look at your CV. If it just comes in out of the ether, to be honest, we're a bit overwhelmed, and I'm sure we're not alone in that. So if you find a role that you think you're a good match for, that's a great way to apply.
Yeah. Very similar at Intel as well. Ours is intel.ie/jobs. And you go into that website and you'll find a place there where you can sign up to our talent network. And you put all your details in there, and obviously the GDPR things are in there as well, so we're allowed to contact you. But as Nick says, attach your interest to a certain role, and right now there's plenty of opportunities.
I think just building on that slightly. So obligatory plug of Amazon.jobs, and you should check it out. But maybe the part of the process that you guys as potential future applicants don't see is what a recruiter would see. And actually, if you're someone that maybe isn't a completely obvious fit for a role, so you want to diversify your experience a little bit and apply to something that isn't a complete 10 out of 10 fit on paper, I think my challenge to you would be to do what you can to make it obvious that you have a specific interest in that specific field in the document that you're providing to the employer. If it's not abundantly clear in the first paragraph that, hey, my background is X, but I'm really interested in Y, and here are the things that I've already done to prepare myself for a career in Y, then you're likely to miss out. Recruiters spend a really small amount of time, unfortunately. Nature of the beast, as we've mentioned, everyone that you're talking to today will get hundreds of applications for most of the roles that they're applying to, so it's a really small window of time you have to make an impression. So right at the top of that document, it needs to be crystal clear why you're a good fit for the role that you're applying to. And I think the other point that I would make is that most recruiters will be able to see the other applications that you have in play for a particular company, and you might think that by applying to 10 different things you're increasing your chances of getting employed. But I think I would challenge that a little bit and say that it's really difficult to see you as someone that's given a lot of clear thought and really focused on something specific if you've applied to an HR role and a finance role and a program management role alongside a ton of other things. So I think this starts with you a little bit. If you're applying to something that's a little bit out of the ordinary for your background, try and be really focused, recognize what the recruiter sees, and make sure that the hard-hitting information is right at the top of your CV and front and center.
Yeah, I would agree with what Ross says. I mean, we have one story from our recruitment team where somebody applied for 34 different jobs, and they were really diverse, and probably a surefire way of not getting a job. But I would maybe add 2 additional things onto what's already been said, and I think I agree with every single point here, and particularly Ross's points around, being very specific about, and the points that both Nick and Bernie made about applying to a specific role. Every single one of us have websites. So for completeness, I'm going to get fidelityinvestments.ie. We have a job site there where you can go. But I would add 2 additional things. So the universities spend a lot of time and energy on career fairs, and I would really encourage you to engage with your careers offices and your careers teams, because they do a huge amount of work and they're very familiar with the employers. They're familiar with previous graduates who work with those employers, and it's a great opportunity to maybe use your network to actually understand what it's like inside the company, because I think everyone here on the panel today has talked about it's up to you to interview us as much as for us to interview you, and particularly in a very hot market, you really want to understand the culture of the company that you're applying for, and are you a good fit. And the second thing I would add is, I know we have an internal referral program, so our employees can refer really good candidates. And I'm sure that exists in other companies as well. So if you know someone who works with a specific company and you maybe be talking to them about the kind of roles they're in, they actually can maybe get you through the referral program, maybe higher up the list with the recruiters, because I know the recruiters have lots of noise that they have to work through, and lots of people don't follow the advice that Ross has just given. And I think that's excellent advice. For me, it's actually always about, you need to understand what your aspirations are. You need to understand where your aptitude lies, and you have to have a really good attitude as you think about your job search. So it's as important as any exam you're going to do in the course of your career. You need to think about your job search in the same way.
Could I just add one quick thought to that, actually, because I think
Sure.
it's really, really it's really valid, and I think, yeah, Lorna makes a great point there, and I think actually all of us on the call today probably get quite a few of those emails and LinkedIn messages and reach outs from people, and I think it's a really fantastic way of demonstrating your motivation and your interest, and the fact that maybe you're a little bit entrepreneurial as well. But I would say there's a difference between good and great in terms of how you reach out to someone. A good intro might be, hi, this is my background, I'm interested in careers at your company, could you point me in the right direction? A better one might be, I've seen this particular job and I'm really interested in that field. I've done this to prepare myself for the experience, and I've started this training course. Can you give me any advice? Might be a better way of doing it. I've been at countless careers events where people will start the conversation, candidates and students will start the conversation by saying, so tell me what kind of jobs I can apply for. And actually, that's a really difficult question to answer, because I don't know what you're interested in and what your strengths are and what you're passionate about. So I think actually put the onus back on yourself to think about that first, and make sure that you're doing the prep to really make a fantastic first impression.
Yeah, and if we do go back to in-person career fairs, represent yourself. Don't have your mother come along looking for your career. I've been at numerous careers where, mothers have come along and said, I'm looking for a job for my son or my daughter. And you go, where are they? They're at home in bed. They've lost, so you need to really, it's your job to forge your career, both as a graduate and when you come into an organization. Everyone here has talked about opportunities to navigate around organizations. Careers are really long. Where you start is not where you necessarily end. And it's important to think about, what steps you want to take to understand and navigate that career. But you have to take that responsibility. So it's not about, the company or your parents or your lecturer or your careers office to find you a role. You need to actually go and do the hard miles.
Thanks, Lorna. The clock is against us, I'm afraid. I have a feeling that that this could go on for a long time, and these are extremely helpful and practical suggestions. Can we just stick on the employability theme for the remaining few minutes? And again, I'll throw it out to all of you. Are there any particular short courses or attributes, such as a second language, that are particularly useful for your company or in high tech, or would help a potential employee stand out from the crowd?
I'm going to say maybe for engineers, your GitHub is your CV. That's the way the world has turned. So, I mean, if you've been involved in things like open source development, or, you've taken, there's loads of short courses on cloud engineering, that's provided by Amazon and all of the different vendors. I think showing a little bit of ambition in terms of doing some work on the side. I think also, so many of the courses actually have intern programs associated with them now, whether you're in business or whether you're in a tech course. If you're on an internship from a business program, why not use that opportunity to share your aspirations with your manager during that internship, and you might actually get some good advice and some opportunities for learning on site. So I think it's really about showing that you actually, if you're going for an engineering job, you need to show your engineering credentials. If you're coming from a business background, you need to be able to bring your transferable skills. And I think there's loads, even on LinkedIn Learning, there's tons of short courses there that people can take that will build it on their CV. And I think, just showing that ability to take the lifelong learning journey is always very impressive.
Yeah, I think that's all right. One thing that you see more and more often now, particularly with the human capital initiative that we have here in Ireland, are these micro credentials, right? And you see the universities offering these micro credentials more and more now. So, if you can, do some micro credential courses such as data analytics, there's always data to be sifted through in all jobs. Communication as well, that's really critical. We've touched on it in terms of applying for jobs and what have you, but being able to talk about yourself, have those conversations. It's definitely an art that I think we're losing a little bit, so I think it's really important that students really take the opportunity maybe to enhance communication, problem solving, teamwork. All of these things are really good things to have in the toolkit when going for jobs. So look out for micro credentials at the institutes that you're at, and you'll be fine.
Great, thanks, Bernie. So with that, I'd like to wrap up. I'd like to thank all of our panel members today for so graciously and generously, giving of their time and providing such marvelous insights from their experience. I learned a lot. It was a really rich conversation and very, very stimulating. And I'm hoping our attendees feel the same way. A special word of thanks to Fabrice Rousseau and Niall Foster from the School of Business and David Keenan, Noel Martin, Claire McGee and Carol Hunt from our Industry Advisory Council, who really worked quite hard to enable this to be such a successful event today. So thanks very much to them. So I hope you enjoyed today's event. I'm certainly looking forward to the next panel session, and that one will focus on the financial service industry. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone again and wish you enjoyable run up to Christmas. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.